Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan, and it's time once again for new acquisitions. I've got 5 brand new books for you this week, and at the end of the show, we're going to go to Dan Torrey and find out about some more books that Captain Logan didn't read. First off, let's take a look at Spawn number 227. Can you believe it? Captain Logan reviewing a Spawn comic? So, this one is the finale, Spawn's New Origin, as it says at the top. Yeah, can you believe that? We're actually ending a story arc finally on this book. It seems like all we've been doing for, well, about 27 issues, frankly, longer than that, really, is Jim Downing's origin, and constantly having all of these talking issues where people are just giving us constant exposition, except we never really know what's exactly real and what's not. Kind of par for the course for this book, really, except even more dragged out than usual once we got to about 210, maybe even a little bit before that. It's all kind of muddling itself together in my head now, and now that this is kind of over and McFarlane is claiming to go into a new direction for Jim Downing, kind of getting past all this origin stuff and all of this, like, setting up the passing of the torch from Al Simmons to Jim Downing. Maybe I'll sit down at some point and kind of read a lot of this together and see if maybe it clicks a little bit better than it kind of felt like it did issue to issue. This is very, very hard to read month to month for me. And this is, by the way, we've got another fun parody cover here. I think McFarlane's about done with these. I've really been enjoying these parody covers. This one is the cover of Amazing Spider-Man number 300, and I think it's kind of fun that it's got, 227 over and over again in the background, like that issue had 300, but there's really no big anniversary thing for this, so at the top it just says special 227th anniversary issue. It's kind of too bad that he didn't use this one for the 20th anniversary cover from Spawn 220, although I really liked what he did with that one, where Spawn's holding up number 20 from the cover where he had 200, but he's lost a 0, and he's all annoyed about it. That's really funny, too. But anyway, that's all neither here nor there. This kind of finishes off setting everything up with Jason Wynn. So we just recently revealed that Jason Wynn has been kind of the linchpin for everything going on with the background of Jim Downing and his apparently being the ringleader of this group of people that was doing scientific experiments on people, and they created Tremor, and for a long time he knew he was somehow involved in the project. Now we know for certain over the last couple issues that he was the director of the project, apparently, and without going too much into detail or giving too much away, apparently all of this has everything to do with Hell's plan for Spawn and Hell's plan for Al Simmons, and the idea apparently is supposed to be as convoluted as I kind of think it is, and as much of an afterthought as it comes off, that the idea is that all of this was a big project between Hell and this secret experiment, kind of a science experiment to enhance what Hell could already do with a Spawn with technology, kind of mixing magic and technology, and I kind of appreciate the idea of doing that sort of classic thing of, instead of science versus magic, it's science intermingling with magic, trying to create something new, and then of course those things aren't really going together very well, so it does end up being science versus magic. And the idea is that Al Simmons was supposed to have been part of this project, and he was supposed to actually be the patient that Jim Downing ended up being, where he experimented on himself. And all of that is really kind of interesting. What I don't care for is that all of this retcons a lot of early Spawn stuff. And it kind of, it tries to be clever about it, and frankly, if you've been watching Spawn, you know that my opinion on this is that Spawn has had kind of a long history of constantly retconning itself because it didn't really have a very clear direction in the first place, really. What we have here is a lot of the early stuff going on with Wynn kind of like rethought and reimagined, and the idea is that Wynn wanted to be anti-Spawn, except that here he acts like he was always called Redeemer, which is sort of funny, that he always wanted to be Redeemer, and he only got to do that for a short amount of time, and then Heaven ended up kind of rethinking things and redoing things, and of course all Jason Wynn cares about is power, and so everything he's done since then, without giving away the big major plot point, the big thing that happens at the end of this, has been to get that power back, but from hell instead of heaven, and it's I can't really go too much into detail about why all of that is silly without explaining things that would make it not worth reading the issue. But I do think that it is a little bit strange how much stuff got changed, especially since I've recently read those issues and it doesn't mix very well at all. Having said all that, this issue by itself, if you don't know all of that, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of more interesting than some of that early stuff that it is retconning, and it's kind of sad that it has to do that in order to work. I'm hoping very much that this new direction with Jim Downing goes to a place where this older Spawn stuff just isn't necessary, it isn't important for the stories that they're telling now, and that more cohesive stuff can be told. Wishful thinking, maybe so. That's what I'm hoping. And anyway, that's all I have to say about that. So next up, my one Marvel book for the week, Superior Spider-Man #2. So you might be asking yourself, Captain Logan, why are you sticking on Superior Spider-Man when you didn't really care for the first issue very much? And my answer to that is twofold. One, I put it on my pull list to get the first issue so that I could review it, even though I've had a lot of trepidation with Dan Slott, and Dan and I have reviewed a lot of his stuff. Obviously, we haven't cared for a lot of it, and me continuing to read it and continuing to review it is kind of going to sound like me being a broken record, probably. But I forgot to take it off my pull list, which is one of the reasons I ended up reading this. But I don't know. I was on the fence. I may have bought it anyway, just out of curiosity's sake, and because it's selling well, it's so huge, and I know some people want me to talk about it. So, am I loving this? Am I really, really enjoying this? No, not really. But I do sometimes feel the need to buy certain things to review, just because I know some of you guys out there are interested in what I have to say about it. Once again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the first issue really did not seem to me like something that was worth starting over. Spider-Man numbering, changing the Amazing Spider-Man title that a lot of people think is kind of blasphemy. I don't want to go that far, but I don't think it's worth. I don't think this story is worth that. I'm not giving away anything. If you read the first issue, at the end of that, we find out that Peter Parker's soul is still there with Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock can't hear him, nobody can hear him, but we get to see him, and we get to see him react to, as this kind of, like, blue, transparent soul, like at the end of Star Wars, reacting to all of the things Doc Ock is doing in his body. And so, more and more, this is feeling like something that can't possibly last. After all, we know that Peter Parker hasn't been completely killed off. His soul is there. It's still on the earthly plane. It's not crossed over yet. This is the easiest possible thing to get back to regular status quo. And so, if this does end up lasting a long time, it's going to seem extremely silly because the out is sitting right there, literally on Doc Ock's shoulder. So, this issue is all about Doc Ock trying to get with Mary Jane, and it's kind of played up for comedy, and honestly, I found it a little bit awkward. And I think it's supposed to be awkward, but it's. I don't know. It wasn't fun to read. It kind of bothered me. And again, I think maybe it's supposed to, but it's also sort of having fun with it. And I'm having a very difficult time telling how I'm supposed to be reacting to this because it really. I mean, forgive me for putting it in these terms. I don't know how else to say it. We've got an old man in a young guy's body who thinks he's got a really easy way to get in an attractive girl's pants. That's what we've got going on here. And it's redeemed a little bit by the end. I was actually kind of surprised by the ending and liked it better after that. But even still, it's just a really kind of creepy thing to watch. And of course, it's creepy for Peter Parker also. So you've got Doc Ock kind of making as you might predict, this is quite predictable, making everything in Peter Parker's life kind of what Peter Parker always wanted it to be, until the end, which I won't spoil, which actually did not go in the direction that I thought it would. I'm sort of impressed with Slott for doing it that way. But like he seems like he's maybe getting back together with Mary Jane through this, and then he's also suddenly got like J. Jonah Jameson really on his side. You know, all these things that Peter Parker would love to have coming together for Doc Ock. And of course not for Peter Parker, but everybody thinks that he's Peter Parker. There's one line in this that really drove me nuts, and that is, there's a place in here where Peter, it's fairly early when Doc Ock is having dinner with Mary Jane, when Peter says, "How is no one figuring out that this isn't me? How is nobody catching on to this?" And that's what I've been saying this whole time. I've been feeling like Slott's been having to write people kind of out of character, kind of dumb them down a little bit, because Peter Parker is constantly talking like a supervillain, saying things that Peter Parker would never say, and people just start catching on to it. They're just going, "Oh, that's kind of strange." And I feel like he's been in his body long enough already that people should really be starting to really wonder about this. He does really bizarre things, and again, it really bothers me because he has Peter Parker's memories, and so I feel like he should be able to mask this better. And it really is played up so much for comedy that it's almost like well, it's like Slott saying there's no point in doing this if we don't get to see Spider-Man acting like Dr. Octopus. And I'm like, well, you could do that more subtly. You could have him operating like a supervillain as a superhero, as we saw in the first issue, which I thought actually worked pretty well when he was in the costume. But don't have him as Peter Parker talk like Doc Ock. That's the first light bulb that's going to go on for somebody seeing this. And the big thing that he keeps doing is, I don't know why he's doing this. Every time Mary Jane calls him Tiger, he responds by calling her Tiger back. That should be the first sign of trouble for Mary Jane. Why is he calling me Tiger? What's that about? Anyway, it's really absurd, and it's just, what drama is here? There are things that I could find myself buying if I wasn't so taken out by stuff like that. So anyway, this is a little better than I thought it would be. I'm gonna say that from the first and second issue. I want to be objective. This is better than I thought it was gonna be so far. And now that I did end up getting the second issue and was kind of like this on it, I may go ahead and at least read it out through the first arc. Just out of morbid curiosity and because I've already started it. But honestly, should you be buying this? I don't know. I'm really resisting this being a new status quo, and I also don't think it's going to last very long. So honestly, if this does last a really long time, that's bizarre and crazy and out there and just a cash-in, and in that case, people really shouldn't be supporting it. If it is a short arc, or not an arc, it won't be a short arc, but I mean, if it doesn't go all that long, and then Peter Parker ends up back in his own body, and this is for some reason still called this, or the numbering system is kept the same, then obviously we'll be at kind of regular status quo again, and then you can jump back in at that point. So I don't know, if you're still really not sure about this and you think it's not that good, I'm telling you, I don't think it's that good. I think it's better than I thought it was going to be, but you might want to sit on your hat for a while and see what happens before you start giving it money. Next up, and I'm being brutally honest when I say that, but that's how I feel about it. So, next up, I decided to try out a couple of things this week because I had kind of a short pull list. So, I read Batman the Dark Knight number 16. This is by Greg Hurwitz with some really great art, really exciting action by Ethan Van Siever. This is, what I've been reading of this has continued to be quite good, and I've only read 2 or 3 issues of this here and there. I keep kind of, well, in fact, Hurwitz hasn't been on it that long, but every now and again I'll pick this up. I really like what little of Hurwitz I've read, and I'm starting to think maybe I should be putting this on my pull list. This is quite good. It's not, like, brilliant, but it's quite good. We've got, We've got Batman trying to figure out this very difficult crime spree where there's not much of a pattern and there's just a bunch of people being kidnapped, big groups of people being kidnapped. At the beginning of this particular issue, it happens to be a bunch of people who work at a sweatshop, and he can't put this mystery together. He can't figure out why this is happening, and all he can do is try to stop it when it happens, and it's kind of frustrating him. And I like this part where he says, "I prefer a pattern." Of course you do. You're a detective, right? And there's, like I said, there's some marvelous action at the beginning of this, where we see Batman in his bat plane, and he has to jump out of it. And his plane actually gets blown up, and he has to jump like on top of or actually to the back of a van, and it's just exciting action, really great stuff. And I really like Bruce Wayne's current girlfriend right now. The other issue I read where I saw her, I was really liking her. She's this concert pianist from the Ukraine. Her name is Natalia, and she seems to have maybe caught on to the fact that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and is making a big deal out of how she's not an idiot, and Bruce Wayne is kind of keeping her at arm's length and treating her like arm candy. She even says that because, of course, he doesn't want to let her know that he's Batman, and he keeps going out late nights, and this kind of classic stuff that you've seen with relationships before. The fun twist that I really like with this is that she manages to take her job being a concert pianist and comparing it to Batman, and it's kind of a cool idea, and makes a lot of sense the way that she does it, where she says, you have to be selfish, and I understand that. We both have very specific paths in our lives, and when we let people in, when we bring somebody else in our lives, we already know how we want our lives to go. We already understand who we are and what we want to be, and we have to find a way to piece that person into that rather than changing everything around. So she's not, even though she doesn't come out and say that she knows he's Batman, it's clear that she seems to, or she knows something. And she basically says, if you asked me to stop being a pianist, I would stop dating you immediately. I couldn't do that, but I wouldn't not tell you what I do. And more importantly, she says she wouldn't not tell him about her past. She had some really awful things that happened to her in the Ukraine when she was younger, and she's told Bruce all about that stuff, but Bruce hasn't let her in yet. All that relationship stuff in this is absolutely fantastic, and they have just wonderful dialogue together. Greg Hurwitz has this great way of writing this kind of tete-a-tete between them, and seems to really know how people fit together, and I admire that quite a bit. We're not given a whole lot about Mad Hatter yet, even though he's on the cover. All we basically know by the end of this is that Mad Hatter is, well, madder than usual, and he acts like we've never seen him act before. That's all I'm going to say. I recommend this. This is quite good. Next up, real quick, Batman Incorporated number 7, of course, by Grant Morrison and Chris Burnham. So this is really violent, like this book always is. We've still got Talia on this crazy crusade to put Batman in his place. And she's trapped him in a really crazy, extremely well-planned trap by the end of this, which I won't reveal, but what I really like about it is that all of these trials she's been putting him through are for a really, really, really good reason, and I really enjoy the intelligence of her plan and why she says she did it by the end. I'm going to say something I've never said before. I like Damian in this issue. Damian is really coming into his own and trying to prove why Batman needs Robin. And in this particular case, he's absolutely right, given that he has a lot to do with what's going on here. At one point, we kind of thought that the whole point was that Talia was trying to get him back, but in fact, we find out that, in a way, I'm not going to reveal exactly what I mean by this, he's kind of been replaced as her son, and now he's got a very good opportunity to prove to Batman how loyal he is to his father, and this is all really quite good. There's also a character that sadly has died, who I thought survived the last issue, but apparently did not make it, and that was really sad. So anyway, this is quite good. This continues to be extremely exciting and engaging and kind of terrifying all at the same time. Also, really love Alfred in this, and some of the dialogue that he has with Damian and what he does with Damian at the end. This is definitely one of the best issues of this book I've read. Finally, I decided to try something out that I hadn't tried yet, and or let me say that I haven't tried since the beginning of 52, and that is Superman number 16. Some people have been recommending this Hell on Earth crossover to me, and I thought I would go ahead and try it out. So I actually bought 15 and 16 today and read them both, and enjoyed it quite thoroughly. The idea with this Hell character, H''L, because it's kind of, you know, it's kind of silly, but I really like it. His name is Hell because he's part of the L family, and he's actually not blood related to the L's. He was brought into the L family by Jor-El, who he worked with in a plan to try to save Krypton. And the reason he's still around is because he went out on a ship and he was supposed to save Krypton and he didn't manage to do it. And there's all this backstory with that I won't get into. But basically, he's now on Earth, and Supergirl is aiding him, and they're actually getting romantically involved, which is kind of scary because, of course, that puts her completely at odds with Superman and Superboy and everybody that's going up against Hell, because Hell is the villain for this. But what I really like is that he's definitely a sympathetic villain. He's definitely a humanized villain, and not in a goofy way. The reason that what he's doing both makes sense and is terrifying is that he needs to destroy our solar system in kind of what they call a reverse Big Bang in order to get enough energy to travel back in time and save Krypton. Now, I don't know why suddenly time travel is that difficult in the DC universe. I guess he's not aware of all of the other beings on Earth that are maybe capable of this. Maybe in 52, there's not as much easy ability to time travel as there was before, because maybe he can't easily get his hands on anybody from the 31st century. But anyway, so he feels like the only way to save Krypton is by destroying Earth and our entire solar system. So he manages to get Supergirl to help him, who doesn't realize that he's going to have to go that far to do it. And he wants to time travel to try to save Krypton, and of course Superman's trying to stop him. And I really like the voice that Scott Lobdell has for both Superman and for Superboy. Superboy's actually kind of a lot of fun, and I heard both really good things and really bad things about that book when it started, and so I've not read this particular version of Superboy at all. But he's really kind of fun. He's witty, and he talks like a real teenager, I think, and Superman has to take him down a peg every so often, but he's not obnoxious either, and I really like that about him. Everybody's interplay is really good in this, and where we get to at the end of this is a really strange cosmic kind of thing that I don't know what to think about until I read on, but I do plan on reading on, actually, and I'm sort of surprised that even though this is a big crossover event, I was able to read issues 15 and 16 of Superman without reading any of the Supergirl or Superboy crossover, and had no problem following what was going on. So if you have thought about this, but you don't want to reach that far deep in your pocketbook, this actually ends on 17, so you might, having not read 17 yet, of course, you might be able to read 15, 16, and 17 without having to read the Superboy and Supergirl books, and still get at least a good sense of what's going on in this arc. I think this is quite good, and I would give this a shot, and I'm thinking about subscribing to this book because of that. So anyway, now let's go on to Dan Torrey, who's going to talk a little bit about some books that I did not read.
Hi everybody, and welcome once again to Things Captain Logan Doesn't Read. I have 4 books to review for you guys this week that I did read, and we have a Dark Horse, a DC, and 2 Marvel, so it's a nice mix of things. We're going to start off with the first book. I'm going to do the Dark Horse one first. This is, another Star Wars book. This is Star Wars Agent of the Empire, Hard Targets, number 4, and this one is by John Ostrander and David Fabry on art. This is the sequel miniseries to the first Agent of the Empire called Iron Eclipse that Ostrander did with Stefan Rokes, who is still doing fantastic covers for all of the minis so far. As you can see here, I absolutely love this cover in particular. I hadn't been all caught up on this series until this week. I actually bought 2 through 4 at the shop, so that's why you guys haven't seen any previous issues reviewed on this show. But now that I'm caught up, I will be reviewing issue 5 when it comes out. So anyway, while I thought Iron Eclipse was an enjoyable introduction to the world of espionage in the Star Wars universe and Jan Cross's character, I'm enjoying this one a lot more because with all the introductions out of the way, Ostrander is getting to take the characters places. He's evolving them, and I really enjoy that. You know, this series has also done some really interesting mythos and world-building things for the Star Wars universe that were very cool to me as a fan. It's very rare that you get anything added to the Star Wars universe within the canon of the films. Like, this takes place between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, so it's often difficult to write any stories within that time frame, I feel, that doesn't feel like gap-filling or just superfluous things that we don't really need to know about. But this adds some really cool things to the mythos that are new and interesting. But let's first start with the character stuff. In the previous issues, we had Cross having to deal with seeing the repercussions of his actions as a spy firsthand, and that continues here. He had previously assassinated the new Count Dooku of Sereno, an ally of the Rebellion, who had succeeded the bland Christopher Lee one from the prequel trilogy after his death. They're both named Count Dooku, but they're of the same lineage, so they have the same name. Basically, he assassinated him so the Empire could get him out of the way and put an Empire-sympathizing puppet in his place, and in turn take control of the system. The Empire had withdrawn Cross from duty on Sereno, excuse me, but he chose to defy orders and stay to protect the young orphan son of the Count, who is next in line to seize power of the throne, but is, of course, being hunted by an ambitious usurper that the Empire is supporting without his knowledge. So, Cross, needless to say, has very few friends and many, many enemies by the time we pick up here in issue 4. And this issue is mainly a rescue mission to save Dooku's son from a kidnapping attempt. And we're heading towards the inevitable confrontation with this mini's Bond villain. So most of this issue's action, but I think this is probably going to serve as the action issue of the mini, and Ostrander provided enough great character stuff in the previous issues for readers to have a stake in all the stuff that's happening here to make this exciting enough. I really enjoyed the action in here. We do get a nice little conversation with Dooku's son and Cross about whether or not Cross is a good man or a bad man that just happens to be on the right side, but other than that, it's mostly Cross and his allies fighting in this extremely dynamic Gungan bongo dogfight underwater near a Gungan-esque city. And yes, I did say the word Gungan twice and exciting in the same sentence. You're not mistaken. Ostrander made me think that those bongo vehicles from Phantom Menace are cool. This guy's awesome. There's also this really interesting parallel that Ostrander makes in this issue with the Clone Wars sort of being the Star Wars universe version of World War II, and the peacetime that followed, or quote-unquote peacetime, the fake peace of the Star Wars universe here being the Cold War. I thought that was a really interesting idea because it makes the Bond parallel a little bit stronger, but it also adds a real-life connection to the Star Wars universe in a different way than it had been before. I thought that was really interesting. And actually makes a lot of sense in terms of some of the other things in canon that happened around this time. So I really enjoyed that about it. I don't really have much else to say about this because it's mostly action, as I said, but Star Wars Age of the Empire is one of the best things Star Wars-wise going on at Dark Horse right now. It's got some of the classic characters in it, too. Like, this mini has already had Darth Vader and Boba Fett in it, and he's sort of one of the big things that's going to play in issue 5, it looks like. So if you're a fan of Star Wars at all, and you just want more stories in the Star Wars universe that are fun and exciting, I definitely recommend this. If you're a Bond fan, it's very Bond, but just in the Star Wars universe, so you might like it too. I don't know, I'm a Bond and a Star Wars fan, so I'm loving this stuff. This is fantastic. I can't recommend it highly enough. Alright, so let's go over to the DC side of things with Aquaman number 16 by Jeff Johns and Paul Pelletier. This is the penultimate chapter of the Throne of Atlantis crossover between Aquaman and Justice League. And this issue pretty much pulls the curtain back on this whole war, the brother versus brother, land versus sea, Justice League versus Atlantean conflict that was triggered in the prologue issue. And it takes a turn here that I didn't see coming at all. It's a big twist. The reveal at the end of the issue, it adds a whole nother layer to the machinations that have been unfolding since this whole conflict began. I'm not going to spoil what the reveal is, but let's just say there's a third party that was involved in triggering this war that we didn't know about previously. I think John's intent here was to show how dangerous and powerful one incredibly ambitious man with a few radical ideas in his head can be. Sort of a commentary on how easy it is to trigger full-scale wars like this, how much deeper political intrigue can run than it appears to be on the surface, and how dangerous terrorists are. I thought all that stuff worked really well, and the reveal itself brings this grand betrayal to light that's very Shakespearean, just as the other issues had been with the warring brothers of two kingdoms fighting against each other. So I really enjoyed that about it. Other than that, Cyborg has more to do in this issue than he did during the entire first year of the Justice League book. So that was not necessarily cool to see, but good to see for that character because he doesn't feel as useless anymore. I still don't really like him on the team, but at least he's doing something. The Justice League as a whole also has a nice presence here, and Johns is using this whole Atlantean war, it looks like, to bring them a little closer, and to have the League realize that they can rely on each other to get out of tough situations and be friends, which is some nice evolution for this team, because they've been doing nothing but hitting each other since this book started. It's good to get a little bit of evolution on both sides. This feels like it's going to be an essential story for both books and be really the thing that's going to evolve the characters past where they started in the first issue of the 52 books. So I'm really enjoying this so far. I'd highly recommend Throne of Atlantis. It's been really good. Next, we're going to move over to the Marvel side of things with Hawkeye, number 7, by Matt Fraction, Steve Lieber, and Jesse Hamm. This issue, as you can see on the cover here, pits Hawkeye against Hurricane Sandy, the hurricane that rocked the East Coast in the New York and New Jersey area. This issue actually hit pretty close to home for me because I live on the East Coast. My immediate vicinity wasn't really affected by the storm other than a power outage for a good amount of time, but I have friends and relatives who were affected heavily by the storm. So it was very cool to see a comic book take on an event that directly affected my personal life. Things like that in comics are always interesting to anybody, I think. I really liked the approach this issue took with that whole situation as well, because it showed some of the destruction, looting, and all the all-around hell that ensued during and after the storm hit, but it wasn't really the focus of the issue. The hurricane is the villain of the issue, the threat that they're trying to combat and get rid of. And the story is mainly about people uniting for a common cause in the name of the common good, helping other people. I probably wouldn't have enjoyed the issue all that much if it was just all about the devastation that happened and making us feel bad for the people that were affected by this. And don't get me wrong, I do feel bad for them. I don't want to discount that at all. But I would have liked something, especially from a superhero book, to be a little bit more inspiring. And this issue, more than any previous one, felt to me like a modern-day Robin Hood spin. With Clint and Kate doing everything in their power to help these people, no matter what the cost. And when the cards are down for them, their good deeds are rewarded by the people they helped. They inspire people and make a difference in these people's behaviors moving forward in their lives. After all, if those people had never had Hawkeye or Kate to help them, they could have been the next Peter Parker before he had that whole Uncle Ben thing, obviously, who doesn't think he should help anyone else because nobody ever gave him a break. I really enjoyed the story in this, and it was a really classy take on Fraction's part, I thought. The only thing I really didn't like about this issue was the second penciler. It's Ham, is the guy's name. His artistic style just didn't really jive well with me. Pretty much all the storytelling works fine, but just from a taste standpoint, I didn't really care for his stuff. It was a little too muddy and sketchy for me for this book. I know Aha has a little bit of that going on, but it was like lines over people's faces and stuff. I didn't really care for it. So overall, I'm still going to recommend Hawkeye number 7. This continues to be a fantastic book, but just the second half of the issue isn't really drawn to my taste. All right, and speaking of Peter Parker, we're going to be jumping over to the Avenging Spider-Man number 15.1, second printing edition. In the comments of the vault, Cap and I did on the Amazing Spider-Man number 698 through 700, the Dying Wish arc that closed the Amazing Spider-Man and ushered in the Superior Spider-Man status quo, I saw a lot of people saying that we should have given Avenging Spider-Man 15.1 a look because it sort of makes sense out of the mess that was issue 700 and the Dying Wish arc as a whole, in my opinion. So on the request of the readers and recommendation, I picked this up. And man, you guys weren't kidding. This was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed this. First, before we get into the story, let's take a moment to stare in awe at Paulo Rivera's beautiful cover here that depicts all of the classic Spider-Man and Doc Ock confrontations throughout Lee's run on Amazing with Ditko and Romita. These are the kind of covers that get me, man. I eat this kind of stuff up. This is probably one of my favorite covers of the year, actually. I really like this, and I'd really like to have this as a poster. But anyway, I'll stop gushing about the cover now. The issue clears up, for me, a lot of the motivation problems I had with Ock being a superhero in Spider-Man's body simply because he had memories that were changing his state of mind artificially. It didn't come from within his character. It was this goofy plot device thing, and it didn't feel organic or warranted in Ock's character for me. It was just kind of like a light switch. This issue takes a bit of a different angle on it. While keeping that stuff that was established in 700 mostly intact, it mentions it in passing, but basically gets him to the same place that he is at the end of 700, just in a better way. It makes the premise work much, much better from anywhere else I've seen it done before, you know, with this whole status quo change from what I've read so far. Yost uses the premise of Ock in Peter's body as a way for him to examine his previous life from an outsider's perspective. It's sort of akin to A Christmas Carol, where Scrooge behaves like a greedy old man in the moment when he's the hero of his own story. But when he's removed from the situation, he has different thoughts about the way he treated the various people in his life. Ock has thoughts like this about his own existence because he doesn't really have any friends that he could, be close to. He has the Sinister Six, but that's about it. And he keeps doing this as he constantly tries to cut ties from his old life, as well as not take responsibility for the failures in his past life. He's at the beginning here constantly criticizing Peter for never going far enough in any direction, that his life was a mess of half-butted, I guess, endeavors that lack of dedication ended up being his downfall, in Ock's opinion. However, when Ock begins to see the legacy that he left behind, when he goes back and starts to revisit some of his old bases to recover some of his tech, he realizes that the extremes in which he went to get what he wanted got him absolutely nowhere. And that Peter Parker's life was exponentially better than his ever was because he's a well-rounded person. He had the loving remnants of a family, friends, and a successful career on top of this crusade of responsibility he felt obligated to have. His life was balanced, happy at least sometimes, in contrast to Ock's life, and generally fulfilling. So Ock decides to use his new chance at life as an opportunity to do something better because he doesn't want to end up the same way he did before, a lonely, chubby old man with nothing to show for his lifetime of big talk. I liked this so much better than the plot device that was used in 700, and I think this should have been the backup to 700 instead of the backups that they put there, because those felt kind of superfluous to me, but I suppose I wouldn't have got my money twice, so there you go. But I would highly recommend this. I really regret not getting the first printing of this, but Amazing Spider-Man 15.1, it's fantastic. Alright, so that's all the books I have for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next time.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for watching the Comic Book Vault, and if there's anything you ever want to see me or Vince review on the Vault, anything you guys just laying around that you'd like us to take a look at, you can always send us things to our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. Thanks as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.